Hey guys, how's it going? CoreData here. Welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be talking about cards and we're taking a look at the upcoming reserve pool shuffle. So today there is no gameplay video, unfortunately. There is a balance patch going live tomorrow at time of recording. I'm recording this on Wednesday the 27th. I believe the balance patch is to go live on the 28th, which is Thursday. And unfortunately it kills the deck I was planning on doing a video on this week, being Germany-US. I had everything prepared and I just needed to sit down and get the video edited, and then they dropped the balance patch and were like, hey, this is happening in 2 days, have fun. So it kind of ruined what I was going to be doing this weekend, unfortunately, but I am going to sit down and have a chat about the upcoming reserve pool shuffle because it's a little bit overdue and there is some interesting cards leaving as well as returning. If you want to hear my thoughts on the balance patch, Bear Gardner and myself actually sat down and had a chat about the post-naval warfare metagame as well as the upcoming balance changes. Very interesting video. There'll be a link to that in the description as well as in the pinned comment. I highly recommend going to check that out and saying hi to Bear in the comments. Engagement does help quite a bit. But today we're going to be taking a look, as I said, at the reserve pool shuffle that is coming. We don't know exactly when this is happening. I'm assuming this is going to happen a couple of days before Air Supremacy launches. We also don't have an exact date on when Air Supremacy is coming out, but it's safe to assume it's going to be sometime around like the 24th of next month. But yeah, this is not going to be an exhaustive list or an exhaustive look at the cards leaving. I am going to basically go nation by nation, talk about some of the cards that I think are interesting that are going, but other than that, I'm going to pretty quickly skim through the stuff that I don't think is going to be all that interesting to a lot of people. Like I said, there's a handful of cards in here that I'm going to talk about that I think are worth talking about, but everything else is going to be a very relatively quick look. So let's take a look first at Britain. Britain is losing 3rd Canadian Division, it is losing Typhoon Mark 1B, it is losing Desert Raid, Aerial Reconnaissance, Against the Odds, and the Merchant Navy. So there is not too much interesting for Britain here. There is 3 cards that are kind of interesting. 3rd Canadian Division being an elite, a 4-cost 1-up, 4-5 guard with salvage. Your salvage units cost 2 less to deploy. On rate, not a bad card. A 4-5 guard for 4 is pretty solid. The fact that it comes with salvage as an extra little piece of value, also very nice. And the fact that it reduces the salvage cost of your cards, also very nice. Solid value for a 4-5 guard. Just didn't really find a home. Again, salvage was kind of before my time playing cards, so I didn't really get to play with it all that much. I never really got to see it being played either. But from my understanding, it was much more centered in Japan and Finland. So a lot of the salvage decks ended up being Japan-Finland. So Canadian Division was just kind of a little bit out of place in Britain, unfortunately. Typhoon, also an interesting card. On rate, solid fighter, 4-cost, 5-4 body. Retreat a ground unit when a ground unit retreats, draw a card. Just didn't really have the support. Retreat cards aren't all that great for the most part, so just never really was able to pop off. I also want to talk very quickly about Aerial Reconnaissance. This is relevant in relation to the recent balance patch when it comes to commandos. Commandos are getting quite heavily nerfed in certain regards. So losing Aerial Reconnaissance is relevant to that deck a little bit. It just kind of means that mana cheating is not going to be as easy anymore. Yeah, hasn't really seen play for a while. From what I understand, it used to be able to reduce things to 0, which was very good. But after it's nerfed to a minimum of 1, it's been pretty much unplayable. And I do want to mention Against the Odds as well, just as an interesting card. A 0 credit countermeasure that draws you a card is baseline, like, fine. So just an interesting piece of tech that Britain is losing, but not really played all that much. Next up, we have Germany. Germany is losing the Panther D, Maelstrom Panther A, the Ju-87B2, 39 Panzer Grenadiers, as well as 33 Panzer Grenadiers. A few interesting pieces being lost here. Panther D is a very, very interesting one. This is primarily a nerf to Blitz Doctrine and Contest Doctrine. Panther D is not a card you would really normally run in your deck natively. However, in certain matchups, when it gets offered by Blitz Doctrine, you take it because it can solo very specific matchups. For example, Germany-US has very few answers for Panther D. Similarly, with decks like Legions, they also struggle to answer a Panther D. So yeah, this is primarily a nerf to the Blitz Doctrine pool. However, it is a shame that it is getting rotated just as we hit a metagame where it's actually been probably at the best it's ever been. I had been running Panther D in my Germany US deck because playing a 1/2/3s plus Panther D on turn 9 is very difficult for decks to deal with, and it pretty much often ends up being a instant kill if they can't remove them. So yeah, unfortunate, but it is what it is. A fun card, but definitely a frustrating one when generated by Blitz Doctrine, so it probably a pretty safe rotation here. Next up, we have Maelstrom. Maelstrom is an interesting one. It's just like a slightly bigger carpet bombing that blanks on veteran units. Hasn't really been seen all that much, and now that Germany has capitulation, it probably would never be seen anywhere. It is just a shame for like traditional control players like myself that we're losing a big AoE, but overall it hasn't really been seen in a little while. Panther A is another semi-relevant card that we're losing here. Handlock has been a solid tier 2 deck, I would say, this expansion so far. Panther A is a handlock-esque effect, however, you don't actually run it in a handlock. Instead, you generate this from your Blitz Doctrines if you're running them. Again, not natively running the decks, just another slight nerf to the Blitz Doctrine pool. Overall, doesn't really affect 90% of decks, just occasionally affects like slightly more aggressive aggro, like slightly more aggressive tank decks as well as handlock, as they would frequently take Panther A and basically lock your opponent up for a turn. And finally, the most relevant card here, I think, is 33rd Panzer Grenadiers. I did a video on Jurfin Heinz at the start of the expansion. Panzer Grenadiers is a great card in Heinz. 3 cost, 4/3 deployment, give friendly tanks +2 attack. Unfortunate that we're seeing it go. It has been a very, very good aggressive body for Heinz decks, but like I said, Heinz isn't super popular, and I found Panzer 3F to be better in the versions of the deck I was playing. So yeah, it's an unfortunate loss, but it is what it is. Next up, we have Japan, and Japan are losing Home Defense on the horizon, Type 94 TK early, B6N Tenzen, 56 Recon, and Out of the Mist. So, Home Defense is an interesting one, and kind of unfortunate, because I have been playing a lot of Japan-Britain control, and Home Defense has actually been not bad in the deck. Especially in a metagame as aggressive as this one, when you're playing this for 4 alongside a couple of other, alongside other pieces of disruption, it's actually pretty good. Being able to hold defense for 4, then stiff upper lip to draw 2 is relevant. So yeah, this is a nerf to me more than anything else. Home defense hasn't really seen play in a lot of decks. Japan control just not really all that viable. So yeah, just an unfortunate loss for me more than anything else. Probably the biggest loss in this rotation shuffle is Type 94 TK early. This is one of the strongest aggro cards in the game. 1 cost, 0 operation, 1/1 tank with Blitz, gets +1 attack when it damages the enemy HQ. This is one of the biggest offenders when it comes to must-kill snowball cards. This is, I believe, the only unit in the game that can get in for damage on turn 1. And if you don't have an immediate answer for this, you are taking at minimum 3 damage from a 1 credit investment from your opponent. Frequently this gets in for upwards of 6 damage before it is generally answered, because frequently it's going to be answered by a blitzing 2-drop usually. So yeah, your opponent invested 1 credit and they've done 6 damage to your HQ. Pretty big. When you look at the games that you lose versus decks like Japan Soviet and Soviet Japan, a lot of times you're going to lose you'll lose like a turn or 2 before you stabilize, just from not having like, oh, I was missing the extra 4 HP I needed to stabilize this game, and frequently that extra 4 HP was taken by a turn 1 TK early. So yeah, this is a huge nerf to Japan aggro. This is a nerf for Japan main, Japan ally, as well as those weird aggro builds of legions, which I don't think are particularly good, but this does also affect those. And then we have another very relevant loss for Japan. That is 56th Recon, a 1 cost, 1 operation, 2/1 infantry with Intel 1. Destruction, deal 1 damage to each enemy unit. 56th Recon is a huge loss for Intel because it is one of 2 1 credit activators for Tarnow. This means that we're going to be seeing a lot fewer games where your opponent plays Tarnow on 5 followed up by a 56th Recon. This also makes it a little bit worse. It also makes it a little bit harder to easily activate your Thunder Division the turn you play it. So yeah, losing 1 credit activators for Intel is a very big deal. It slows down the Tarnow turns quite a bit because they have to wait until they have an extra 2 credits to play something else with Intel on it, like a stretched line or whatever. So yeah, this slows down the Tarnow pop-offs a little bit. It's just an overall big loss for Intel. Also affects like the aggro matches, because frequently a 56 recon just really stumps decks like Japan Soviet. While it can be punished a little bit by like things like scouting parity, frequently it doesn't matter, because you're going to be like 2-for-1ing your opponent, because they just can't play Cavalry Regiment or TK early as soon as you play Recon. So yeah, this is a massive loss for the Intel deck. This is probably the single biggest change in this entire rotation shuffle, is the loss of 56 Recon. This is going to have like the widest and most profound effect on a meta deck. Next up, and finally for Japan, we have Out of the Mist. This is a very interesting card and an unfortunate loss for slower Japan decks. It's basically Japanese Bloody Sickle in a weird way. 1 credit, deal 1 damage to target unit. If it's destroyed this turn, salvage it. Basically just a free card if you destroy a unit the turn you Out of the Mist it. Incredibly potent versus aggro. Occasionally seen in Intel, because you're able to basically Out of the Mist your own units and then get more Intel triggers. Just a very potent piece of interaction early. Very good against aggro, decent against mid-range, and occasionally in control mirrors you would actually Out of the Mist your own things just for extra value. So yeah, unfortunate loss, but I think they seem to be sunsetting salvage. We saw a bunch of salvage cards go with the previous rotation, and again we're seeing more now, so I wouldn't be surprised to see salvage go the exact same way as like mobilize. Next up, we have Soviet, and for Soviets, they are losing the P40B Tomahawk, they are losing Urban Fighting, the OT-34, Red October, T-35, and Special Reinforcements. There's 3 cards here that I want to talk about. First and foremost, I want to talk about the Tomahawk. It is so funny to me that Tomahawk has been pretty much unplayable, from what I understand, for most of its existence. It then made it to the top 8 of the most recent expansion tournament in the Soviet Japan, like the Soviet main aggro list. And it was like, okay. And then as soon as it got its top 8, they were like, gone, rotated. It's so funny to me that it made it exactly to 1 top 8 and then immediately got rotated. Yeah, Tomahawk, unfortunate that it's being shifted out of the format just as it's starting to come good. The printing of 99 Comb is a big enabler for this. It gives you a cheap blitz unit that can make the most of the big stat buff. So yeah, it just gave the Soviet Japan deck a little bump in value in like the mid game when it needed the extra stats to kind of get over the line. Yeah, just an unfortunate timing on the rotation of this, just as it started to become a decent card. I also want to talk about OT-34. This is it's a 3 cost, 2 up, 3/4 tank, deals double damage against infantry and HQ. The reason I want to mention this is because I am so sad that this is getting rotated, because it is one of 2 cards in Soviet that interact with frontal defense. I've been hoping that they add more things that interact in funky ways with frontal defense. Soviet was one of 2 nations that had things that actually interacted with it, and they've just lost one of the 2 pieces that do. So I guess I'm going to be stuck playing US Poland frontal defense until they add some more support for it, unfortunately. And finally, I want to talk about the T-35. This is a 2 cost, 1 up, 2/3 tank, deals 1 damage to each HQ at the end of your turn. This is a relevant piece from the old self-damage deck, basically an enabler for your self-damage synergies, like the 1/3 that gains +1/+1 guard every time you take damage, or the 7 cost 6/6 that gets reduced in cost as you take damage. Just a cheap enabler that's just being rotated out. Unfortunate, because there's some interesting things you can do with the self-damage package, but it doesn't surprise me that they're moving away from that slightly. And finally, we have US, and US is losing 5th Medical Battalion, Special Assignment, Devil's Brigade, B-25H, M4, A3, R3, Zippo, and CBs. There's only like 2 cards I really want to talk about here. Medical Battalion is a slight nerf. It nerfs specifically and pretty much exactly Seaborne Invasion. Whenever you play a Seaborne Invasion and you roll Medical Battalion, you have an exactly like a 50% chance of rolling a 6/6 with with Blitz. Otherwise, you're going to get a 6 attack infantry without Blitz, being the 6/6 Smokescreen or the American Guards. So that's a bit of a nerf to Seaborne Invasion, because I don't think I don't think you can actually generate the 60 blitzers off Seaborn Invasion anymore with the loss of Medical Battalion. Devil's Brigade is a very relevant card. It's going to be a little bit less relevant now after the balance change. Again, if you want to hear more about that, go check out the video that myself and Bear did. But yeah, just a 3 cost 1 op 3/2 with Blitz. It's an Alpine unit. Deployment, deal 1 damage to an enemy. If it is a unit with Alpine, destroy it instead. Very relevant in a metagame where Bergman was absolutely everywhere. I do think we're going to be seeing a little bit less Bergman Battalion with the change to 1-2-3s and the convert timing. So probably a good time to shift it out, especially if you're trying to push Alpine a little bit more, especially with the printing of Bergman Battalion being an Alpine unit. I can see people maybe wanting to experiment a little bit more with Alpine now that 1-2-3s again has been changed. So yeah, probably a good time to get rid of Devil's Brigade, but a very relevant card to be losing. Very good against aggro, can usually 2 for 1, and again, like I said, very good into the Bergman stuff. And the other relevant card here I want to talk about is the B-25H. This is a 5 cost 2 op 3/3 bomber deployment at a gunship mission. Your end gunship mission is a 2 cost order that deals damage to a target in the support line, and you gain 2 HP. This is a relevant loss specifically because of Bomber Mafia. This was like one of the few remaining decent things you could grab off Bomber Mafia in a handful of very specific situations. Because it gave you access to gunship mission, it meant that you had access to a little bit of healing as well as a little bit of burn damage. So yeah, just a relevant loss from the Bomber Mafia pool. Bomber Mafia feels so bad right now. The pool is terrible, so hopefully it gets a little bit of a buff. The loss of Production Order pretty much has made the card feel terrible. So yeah, B-25H, just the other relevant loss here. And finally, I want to talk about the Allied Nation cards. We are losing the second Rima, we are losing Line for Day, and we are losing Karas. There's only 2 cards here I want to talk about, and that is Line for Day and the Karas. Line for Day is a 4 cost Italian order. Destroy target unit for more attack. This is relevant in a handful of decks. Control decks pretty much want this every now and again. I can understand why this is being rotated. It's not really seeing that much play right now. You have cards like Dagger Strikes, you have La Decima, you have a few other interaction pieces that are doing the job a little bit more efficiently. You also have the newly buffed Trento Division, which I'm guessing they're going to try and push people towards playing a little bit more. Trento Division, if you haven't read it, is an absurd card after the buff. So yeah, they're just rotating Line for Day, just removing a little bit of extra removal from the format. And I want to talk about the Karas. So this is a 3 cost 2 op bomber. It is a 2/2 with Intel 2 at the end of your turn. Add a Section 2 to your hand. Section 2 is a 2 cost order. Draw a card, and it's got Intel 1. This again is a hit to the Intel deck. This isn't as big of a hit as the 56 Recon because Karas was kind of run by preference. You'd often only see 1 copy in the Intel decks just as an extra little piece of value as well as extra Intel generation. So not as big of a hit as 56 Recon because 56 Recon was such an important piece. But the Karas does affect some slightly slower versions of Intel, so it is worth talking about. Like I said, Intel is getting hit quite hard by this rotation, which is not a bad thing, considering the decks around it are getting hit quite heavily by nerfs. It makes sense to hit Intel in this way. So yeah, those are the cards leaving the format. Some interesting stuff, like I said, the main things leaving that I think are super interesting are Panther D from the Blitz Doctrine pool, TK Early from the aggro decks, 56 Recon as well as Karas from the Intel decks. And then you have things like Tomahawk leaving the the Soviet Japan aggro list just as it actually became playable, which is very funny to me. But there's a couple of cards I want to talk about in the returning cards. So again, we're going to go nation by nation here. So returning cards for Britain, we have the Oxford, the Argyllshire Highlanders, and the Welsh Guards. Oxford is getting changed, so it's going from a 2 cost 1/3 when a ground unit is deployed, attack becomes equal to its defense, and it is turning into a 2 cost 1/3. Whenever you deploy or add a guard unit, give it +1/+3. Very powerful effect. I don't know if we're going to have the tools to make use of it. I'm certainly going to try and make use of it because it is a very, very, very powerful effect for a 2-drop. It's a lot of stats to be dishing out on everything you deploy or add, and the add is very important. Yeah, just a very, very powerful effect, but I don't know if it's going to pan out or not. Then we have the Argyllshire Highlanders. This is a 3-cost 1-up 1/6, gets +1/+1 when you deploy or add a guard unit. I don't know if this is going to see play, honestly. It seems a little bit... Again, it's got deploy or add. It could be fine, but I don't know. It just doesn't seem great on rate to me. And then we have Welsh Guards. It's a 1-cost 1-up 1/2 with guard. Deployment, give another target +1 defense. This, I think, might see play as an anti-aggro tool. It's also probably fine in, like, the guard deck with Oxford. It's also a cheap enabler for things like Stiff Upper Lip. So, yeah, I think this might find its way into, like... It could find its way into, like, a Zoo deck, because the 1 defense is also relevant for trading. So it could see its way into, like, Zoo or Tempo. Just an interesting card to be coming back. For Germany, we have the Tiger 1E, we have Eagle Day, and we have Entrapment. Tiger 1E is an 8-cost 3-op 7/7 heavy armor 2, cannot be targeted by enemy orders. I was really hoping this was going to get reworked, considering we have Panther G and we have King Tiger that already have the cannot be targeted by enemy orders effect. I was hoping this would get something interesting to do. But it is coming back as it left. This is pretty much just going to be a Contest Doctrine card. I don't think anyone is going to be running a Tiger 1E in the deck. But yeah, probably a relevant card to pull off of Contest Doctrine. You're likely going to pull it in the matchups where you would have gone for Panther D. Then we have Eagle Day, a card I am unreasonably excited to play with. So, Eagle Day is a 5-cost order, but a German air unit into play with Blitz. Return to your hand at the end of turn. We are moving into an air-focused expansion, so it's safe to say we're probably going to get 1 or 2 more German aircraft. However, I really want to play this in, like, Germany, US. I just want to ramp. I just want to play Eagle Day. I want to dump a Junkers in double A, and I want to hit my opponent for 10. That's what I'm looking to do with this card. But you also have Schwalbe as a potential target for this. That is basically 8 credits, deal 7 to the HQ if they don't have a guard. And then you have Schwalbe in a metagame where we're going to be seeing probably a lot more aircraft. So, might not be terrible. Definitely something I'm looking forward to testing out, though. And then we have the Entrapment. This is a 5-cost countermeasure for Germany. When a unit attacks, destroy it, your units get +1/+1. This is just going to be an Aufklärung card, pretty much. This is just going to be occasionally generated by your Aufklärung. You're going to be, like, okay with it. Likely not going to be as good as a Bridge Too Far in most cases. But it does give a potential thing to play around, so it's not just if you leave 12 credits open, oh, it's Bridge. At least now they have to think it could be Entrapment, maybe. So, yeah. Again, not going to see play naturally in decks, but it will be picked from Aufklärung from time to time. Then for Japan, we have returning the Ki 46 Dina. This is a 3-cost 1-up 1/3 fighter deployment. Draw 2 random 1-cost from your deck. This seems really powerful to me. I'm not sure if I'm wrong. I could be wrong. When I look at this, I just think of, like, Crystology in Hearthstone. If you've ever played with Crystology in Wild in Hearthstone, it's incredibly potent. A 1-cost, draw 2 1-drops from your deck. This basically depends on the quality of 1-drops in the format, and right now we have a lot of very good 1-drops in the format, so I can see Dina slotting into, like, the aggressive Japanese decks. I can also see it slotting into slightly slower Japanese decks, alongside the next card, which I'm going to talk about. But yeah, I think Dina is going to be a solid card. I'm actually looking forward to playing with this. This is probably going to be slotted into Japan Soviet as well as some of the more mid-range stuff. And I am looking to maybe test this out in Japan Control, again alongside the next card which we're going to talk about, which is the Type 94 TK. This is a 1-cost 0-op 1/1 tank. Deployment at a surprise attack to your hand. Surprise attack is a 1-credit order. Pin target unit. If it's pinned, destroy it. Or if it's pinned already, destroy it. This is, I think, deceptively strong. A 1-cost 0-op tank is already relevant in an aggressive deck. The fact that this 1-cost 0-op tank also gives you a very cheap piece of disruption. Just any cheap creature that gives you cheap interaction as a side benefit is very, very worth looking at. But also, this can be tutored up with Dina, which means that your Dina can now find you, potentially, it can find you Pin, which is relevant. Like I said, I'm looking at maybe playing this in Control, because you can now tutor up 58 Infantry, the 3/2 shot guy, plus TK 94 TK, which means you now have one of the best anti-aggro infantries able to search, as well as a decent anti-aggro and anti-mid-range tool, technically. And then if you're playing, like I've been, Japan-Britain, you're playing Cromwells, which means this is just a tutorable suppress in a lot of cases. So yeah, Type 94 TK is a card I'm very excited to play with. I think it goes in a lot more than just aggro. And finally, we have Imperial Decree, 0 cost. The next damage order you give this turn deals +1 damage. I am not familiar with if this card was playable or not previously. On the surface, I don't think so. The only reason I can see 1939 bringing this back is that they're potentially printing a handful more Kamikaze synergies. So they gave us back Kika at the start of Naval Warfare as part of that rotation, which gives you 4 Kamikazes in deck, or 4 or 5 Kamikazes in deck. They're 1 credit, deal 1 damage to the enemy HQ and draw cards. The big reason I can see Decree coming back is potentially because they're printing 1 or 2 more Kamikaze cards, which would make sense in a air-focused mini set for Japan to give them like 1 or 2 more Kamikaze pieces. So yeah, we'll have to see. I don't know if this is particularly strong. It doesn't read like it's strong to me, but 0 cost orders are always worth looking at, so you never know. Next up, for Soviets, we have Minority Recruits, we have Partisans, and we have Confusion, all returning. These are all kind of... these have a folklorish reputation from players who've played with them. A lot of people were kind of complaining that they were bringing these back. I am not sure. I totally agree. Minority Recruits is a 10 credit take control of an enemy unit. It is literally mind control from Hearthstone. We already have a card that does basically the same thing, being co-belligerence in a much more playable nation than Soviets right now. And co-belligerence is a terrible card. I can't see Minority Recruits being any better, so I don't think this is going to see any play realistically. It's an interesting card, and you bet your ass I'm going to be playing with it because I love playing big, silly elites. But I don't expect to win many games by playing Minority Recruits. Partisans is a bit better. Take control of enemy unit at the end of turn, send it to the owner's hand for 6 credits. It's a bit better, but I don't think this is anywhere near as good either. You're kind of relying on your opponent having creatures in the front line to train into with it. I don't see the vision for Partisans, really. Plus, if you want to combo it with like Ural Factories, whatever, it's an extra 2 credits on top of that. Or if you want to try and convert it with like Honorifics, it's an extra 2. Or Wolves Division is an extra 5 to draw 2. So yeah, I just don't quite see these cards being all that playable in the current format. However, I do see Confusion being playable. 3 credits to take control of an enemy unit with cost 3 or less until end of turn. I think Confusion is the most playable of them. I think this is actually going to be not bad in the format moving forward, because you can take control of a enemy legion that's been buffed up, for example. Take a trade, and then you can maybe Ural Factories, or you can maybe Honorifics it, and it's not going to break the bank credit-wise. So yeah, I think Confusion is going to be the most eminently playable of the 3 returning cards. I am definitely going to play all of them, because again, I just want to play big, silly cards. Plus, they're new to me, so I'd like to do some experiments with them. But yeah, I think Confusion is going to be the most eminently playable version. And I'm excited to play around with it. It's going to be a lot of fun. And finally, we have US. So US are getting Counter-Strike back, they are getting 5th Rangers back, and they are getting the F4 Wildcat back. But there is 2 changes here. Counter-Strike is being changed to 2 credits, exact same test, exact same everything. I talked about this in Bear's channel. I don't think this is going to be playable. I think this is actually pretty bad. Both of the US elite countermeasures just don't do anything. Air defense is equally unplayable, so it's unfortunate. It feels bad when you unpack one of these elites. I'll be real. So yeah, it's just unfortunate. It's better at 2, but it's still, I think, pretty unplayable. We then have 5th Rangers. This is a 4 cost, 4 op, 4/4 with Blitz. Deployment, choose one. This unit has 0 op cost or gets +4/+4. I was so excited to play with 5th Rangers, but unfortunately it doesn't function how I hoped it functioned. I was really excited for playing this in Throp, because on the surface this is everything that Throp wants. However, the deployment, the choose one, the timing it doesn't work correctly, or it doesn't work how you want it to work. So basically, when you cast this, you make the decision while it's on the stack, and it enters with the 0 op, so none of your Throp units see it with the 4 op cost, unfortunately. So that kind of wrote that idea off, unfortunately. But yeah, still a decent mid-range unit. Forecast 440 op is just going to be fine in mid-range. Plus, it has the option of being a forecast 4 op 8-8 with Blitz. Again, it might make its way into Throp. We'll see. Throp does need a little bit of speed in the mid-game. It needs a little bit of interaction, and it's struggled with that recently. So maybe Fist Rangers is good enough. But I'm excited to try this out in a variety of US mid-range decks. I want to test it out with US Italy, because I would like to cast Air Escort on this and make a forecast 0 op 8-8 with Blitz. I think that'll be fun. And finally, we have the F4 Wildcat. This is also getting changed. This is going to be a 2-cost 2-2, a 2-cost 2 op 2, a 2-cost, Jesus, holy, oh my god, a 2-cost 2 op 2-3 with Blitz. When it enters the front line, you spawn a Brewster next to it. This is a really interesting card, if not a very difficult one to analyze. It kind of have to play with it before we really know. The most interesting thing about this is going to be the single cheapest Blitz fighter we've ever seen. I don't think we've ever had a Blitz fighter at 2. Blitz fighters have always started at 3, like with the Hurricane. And this is going to be one of the cheapest Blitz aircraft full stop that has like no attack restriction. Like we had the 2-1 bomber from Japan that couldn't attack HQs. So this is worth looking at for that reason. The fact that it is a super cheap Blitz fighter. The fact that this can chip in from the support line for 2 damage is relevant. The fact that if you push this forward in matchups where you need board presence, it spawns an extra dude, also potentially relevant. It's an interesting card. I'm excited to test it out. I just don't know if it's going to be good. I'm hoping it's like okay. Again, how bad can a cheap Blitz aircraft really be? But yeah, that's pretty much my thoughts on the rotation list. It's, I think, deceptively it's deceptively good for what it's trying to achieve. Like I said, I've already spoken with Bear about the balance changes, which touched on pretty much every deck, and then the rotation is touching on the decks that the balance changes didn't really hit, such as Intel. So I think overall, as a package with the balance changes plus the rotation pool, or the reserve pool shuffle, I think it is a pretty relevant balance patch overall. I will say, however, because the balance patch goes live before the rotation happens, we are going to be entering a 2-week span where Intel is pretty much the best deck in the format because it's not getting nerfed really. It's not losing anything. The Thunder Division nerf doesn't really affect how the deck overall functions. So yeah, we're going to be experiencing 2 weeks of Japan, Poland, Intel, I'm afraid. But after the shuffle happens, it should kind of bring everything back down to where it should be. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff, and we'll catch you in the next one. Peace.